So yeah, I wouldn't have made this video today if I wouldn't have made this video today if Father Peter hadn't chosen today to do that. Uh, Good evening, through the prayers of Holy Father, for Jesus Christ, who God of mercy, let us and save us. Amen. This is Father Joseph Swaden, also known as of yesterday as Chubby J. Dyer. Happy feast of the exaltation of the Holy Cross. Today is a particularly important feast for true Orthodox, as we also remember the 99th anniversary of the appearance of the sign of the cross over Athens. It's a particularly important day historically for us. And so the fact that, unfortunately, Father Peter decided to create a video called Why Doesn't Father Peter Join the Old Calendarists? And I'm going to tell you why. And we're going to lay all the stuff out on the table. There's a few things you need to understand historically with our history and when it comes to Father Peter. Father Peter has always been part of the State Church of Greece, at least until he joined ROCOR or whatever. But he had attended, I believe, a conference run by the Synod in Resistance. And he's spoken to people in Hakna years ago, apparently. I think when Father Panteleimon was alive. I'm bringing these things up for a bit of background so that we can clearly understand why I titled this the way I did. I was of the school just a couple of years ago, having little familiarity with his work. I was of the school that perhaps he would come to the true Orthodox and would be happy and peaceful there. First off, good evening also to everyone. John, Yellowfish, Vasilia, TG, Jeem, thank you for watching. I'm not convinced anymore of that. I'm convinced he really, really does not like us. And I'm going to put the video on that he put today, and we're going to live review it. But this kind of thinking that he wants to join us is a fantasy. And I'm going to lay out precisely why it is. But in any case, allow me to present the video so we can get started. Excuse me.
Ecumenism is, of course, a problem in the Go Arch and other jurisdictions. How can you hold the global Orthodox position, critique ecumenism, and not go true Orthodox? So the answer is that the saints from all ages have resisted heresy and teach others to resist heresy. And even there is canons that even support the secession of commemoration of your bishop, only your bishop. That's Canon 15 of the First Second Council. There are examples of that in church history, but it's not to set up a parallel jurisdiction. It's not to break off and then turn around and before a council and then turn around and before that in church history, but it's not to set up a parallel jurisdiction. It's not to break off and then turn around and before a council, before a condemnation of the particular heresy that's risen, to essentially become a sectarian and break off from all the Orthodox who are also struggling against ecumenism.
Okay, I'm going to stop it here because this is really his position. He truly believes that there is no way to properly break off from your bishop. It's illogical, and I'm going to get to why it's illogical very quickly. But the point is, it's also historically a fable. It's not true. So we're going to go through it one by one, and you'll see what I mean. Because I'm going to have to, this is a 5.5 minute video, and I'm going to have to deconstruct it a little bit.
It does not support the idea that if one bishop teaches heresy in your bishop or a bishop in your jurisdiction teaches heresy, or even 10 bishops teach heresy, therefore the entire Orthodox local church of whatever,
right,
Romania, Constantinople, Antioch, is therefore lost. And
okay, now I'm going to stop him here again because he's misrepresenting our position. We don't hold, true Orthodox do not hold that there are actually confessing bishops in world Orthodoxy. We're quite serious when we talk about, and I noticed the one example he didn't use, which is the one example he's been part of, is the Church of Greece. And in the reason why he doesn't use the Church of Greece is because of the fact that he has to be aware of the history, where until the late 1970s, the state had been persecuting the true Orthodox on the old calendar. We're not just talking about martyrdoms, though those did happen. We're not just talking about mass jailings, though those did happen. We're not even there. The personhood of a true Orthodox Christian in Greece was severely limited. Their baptisms weren't recognized. Their marriages weren't recognized. Take that into account for just a moment here. If you were a true Orthodox Christian in 1960 and you were married in the church, those of the other side could literally see you as unmarried and your wife is fair game. That's the sort of demented and evil thinking that we find among the new calendarists in Greece from 1924 to the 1970s. And I realize that sounds cruel and horrible, but it wasn't us doing it. It was literally, I hate to say it, the state church doing it. So in any case, let's take a look here, and we're going to continue, and we're going to take apart his examples point by point.
There are many instances in church history where we have large numbers of people apostatizing to a particular heresy. Iconoclasm is the most obvious.
Right. And since he brought up iconoclasm, it's worth noting that there were actually divided groups of iconodules at the time under different sets of bishops who were not in communion with each other nor with the iconoclast. And the Seventh Council actually had to reunite these groups.
Arianism was a major.
Another one where there were scattered groups of Orthodox in areas where the Arians had power, and they had to reunite themselves.
Example, there was false unions with the Monophysites.
Which also caused splits, which we know of to this day still exist, which is why you have Orthodox parties of Antioch and Monophysite parties of Antioch and Alexandria, so on and so forth. If he wants to present this as the church remained unified and didn't split into groups because of heresy, those aren't the examples you want to choose.
The false unions with Rome, too.
St. Mark of Ephesus did the exact same thing, broke communion with the innovating patriarch. Those who stuck to the union up until the elevation of Gennadius Scholarios those who stuck to the union were united to Rome, and they had no communion with the Orthodox, who eventually prevailed a decade later. This is one more thing to remember. Most of these divisions, like the dividing lines, were made within like a decade, and we're going on 100 years, and which is why I'm shocked that on the 99th anniversary of the appearance of the True Cross over Athens, he chose to put this video out. That's not an accident.
Major false unions with Rome, where there were major times of apostasy. So the Orthodox patristic response to heresy.
Before I'm going to say this, I tried to give Father Peter the benefit of the doubt, but I've run out of patience in the fact that he has always said and continues to say the Orthodox patristic response to heresy, and he lies about it.
Cannot be justified in doing what the so-called old calendars or the true Orthodox have done. It's not
even though it's the same thing that the Orthodox did with the Monophysites you mentioned, with the Arians you mentioned, with the iconodules you mentioned. It's literally the same thing.
Patristic response. The saints of our day haven't done that.
The saints he's referring to are the ones he nods on ad hominem, and not ad hominem, ad nauseum, excuse me. Got the Latin wrong. And that's, say, Elder Porphyrios, Elder Paisios, Elder Ephraim, Elder Iacovos. Will he mention them today? You bet he will. But the reason he chooses those selectively and harps on them constantly is because they say exactly what he wants, which is don't join the true Orthodox, call them old calendarists, stay with the patriarch, even if he innovates. They say what he wants. They don't represent the patristic tradition. They don't represent the Orthodox patristic tradition. They abandoned it, and that is why he chooses them.
And proof of this is at least in the following: that the so-called true Orthodox or genuine Orthodox do not recognize the sanctity, the saintliness.
No, we don't, because of the fact that they confessed union with heresy. That's why.
Holiness of major saints who also opposed ecumenism.
Let's go through the list.
Who are not ecumenists, did not participate in ecumenism, were opposed to ecumenism, like Saint Paisius of the Holy Mouth.
You mentioned Elder Paisius, ding.
Saint Ephrem of Katonakia.
Elder Ephrem, ding.
Saint Joseph the Hesychist.
They redid his history. We're not going to talk about that one because both sides venerate him as a saint, but only one side's telling the truth about him. Let's continue.
Saint Emmanuel, Saint
I don't know who that is.
Porphyrios.
Ding.
Many others.
There aren't many others because these are the ones he uses over and over again to justify communion with heresy.
I mean, just one of the saints that's celebrated by the so-called true Orthodox, Saint Seraphim of
Archbishop Seraphim Soboliev of I believe it's Bulgaria, I want to say, was originally part of the Church Abroad. He eventually broke from the Church Abroad, and he participated in the 1948 Moscow Sobor, which eventually led to other local churches signing capitulatory documents that declared America the enemy of Orthodoxy because it wasn't under the communists.
Sofia went to a Sergianist council in Moscow, which
that would be the 1948 council I just referenced,
which was against ecumenism, but he was there communing with those who.
It was against ecumenism, as it referred to it as, what was it? It was infiltration from the West. However, 12 years later, the Moscow Patriarchate would then join the World Council of Churches.
Other saints in Russia had eschewed any kind of communion with. So the simplistic approach, really ultimately, the methodology, the way of the some at least on the far right or those who've erred on the right.
Again, following the traditional pattern of ceasing commemoration and finding a true Orthodox bishop is not a far right idea. It is the historical practice of the church, and this is old.
Their methodology actually meets. I just gave a lecture in Cyprus about this. It'll come out eventually in English. That ecumenism, philetism, and zealotism actually meet in many ways methodologically.
Okay, ecumenism, philetism, zealotism meet in many ways. Oh, okay. I don't know that I don't know if that's. I don't even want to think about how that paper is going to be.
And resemble one another in different ways, and they're all falling away from the royal patristic path of the saints. So the minute you,
I don't think that Father Peter should talk about the royal patristic path of the saints, when the royal path seems to always mean accepting the ecumenism of the leadership. I had somebody on Twitter. He was referring to Father Peter as a schismatic, and I pointed and I said that he's not a schismatic; he's a gatekeeper. And what I mean by that is that some of the people who have come to us, to True Orthodox, and I think everyone that's in any True Orthodox group online can attest to what I'm about to say, but it happens even with clergy as well when we hear it, which is that people come out of movements like what Father Peter is sponsoring. They either go back and they become just peaceful new calendarists, or they come to us broken, like terrified that they're violating the will of Saint Paisios or something. It's insanity. They're more afraid of losing whatever blessing they think they got from an elder than doing what's right by God. And I feel bad. These are hurting people, but this is not patristic, and this isn't right. And what Father Peter says about us tells us that he does not consider us Orthodox. He does consider ecumenists Orthodox. And he would rather you stay under those ecumenists at the risk of the loss of your soul than come to us. And that's pretty shameful.
Who don't follow the saints of our day that came before.
We have saints of our day. they're just not your saints.
For us in our time, and you separate yourself not only from those teaching heresy, but the saints themselves, you have not.
There are saints themselves who do not admit heresy. They don't tolerate heresy, and they aim for the protection of the faith and those faithful who are following it. I don't consider your Constantinople elders saints because they all blessed and mandated communion with Constantinople and with the ecumenists. So while the Greek archdiocese's bishops are blessing Hindu temples, you're telling these people to stay with the flock because some elders said that everything is fine in the Patriarchate of Constantinople. The only way I can countenance that Father Peter isn't truly ashamed of himself for saying the horrible things that he's saying is that he genuinely believes them. And if he genuinely believes them, then I imagine he really doesn't like us at all. He doesn't consider us Orthodox, it would seem, and he's just trying to avoid not saying that. But that's fine, because we don't consider the New Calendarists and we don't consider the Ecumenists Orthodox. And if you want to stay with them, you can, but at least be honest about your position.
You're not following the saints that have come before us, and that's the cornerstone.
No, we're following the saints that have come before us. We're not following your saints that blessed ecumenism. Just recently, Orthodox traditionalists put an article that was from the State Church of Greece about the EP glorifying Gabriella Papayani. I highly recommend everybody look at the new saint on Constantinople's calendar, because she's just she goes further than ecumenism. She's a flat-out syncretist. This is what they're glorifying and calling orthodoxy. People should be ashamed, and they should be afraid for their souls.
The touchstone of orthodoxy is that we follow the Holy Fathers before us.
But you don't follow the Holy Fathers before you. You follow a few elders. You don't follow the Holy Fathers in general. And what you're doing is wrong. And you spit on a holiday that means a lot to the true Orthodox to say why you shouldn't join them.
So that's one of the main reasons methodologically it does not hold. We're not following the saints and the fathers of our day or those of ancient times. And I'll just give you one.
I agree. You're not following the saints and the fathers of your day or any time.
Example, then Constantine can jump in if he wants. Go to the 4th century. Go to the post-First Ecumenical Council period. Go to the 370s, 60s, 70s, and go to 3 saints that were all.
1 second, everyone. Hold on. Okay. Hold on. Let me finish up here. Okay, 1 second. I'll be right back. Okay. And so, this is not looking good at all. I hate to say this. To everyone coming in, because I'm watching on full screen, I didn't see Blessed Feast of the Cross. Good evening, everyone. Let me see here. Hello to everyone reaching out. Hopefully, we may have a special guest come in just a moment. And let me see here. And good evening, Father Antonio's Orthodox Traditionalist Publications, Vasilia, Death to Compromise. All right, so let's continue on, because we'll get to this, and hopefully we'll see if our guest wants to come on.
All post-First Ecumenical Council, all elected in part by Arians. They thought that they were going to have an Arian position. They were a part of the local church in some way.
Yeah, this was after the Arians had taken over certain local churches.
Fashion, they were in part because they were electing these bishops. I'm talking about St. Ambrose of Milan, St. Meletios of Antioch, and
it's worth noting that because of the situation with St. Meletios being recognized by the Arians until he turned on them, that there were in fact different factions of Orthodox, such as the the followers of Saint Paulinus. So yeah, and Saint Ambrose was a very capable fighter against the heresy of the Arians. So the idea that this was simple. Plus, in the case of Saint Ambrose, we were dealing with Arians like Auxentius, who simply were lying that they were not Arians to the emperor, so that they could continue going back to their sees and preaching their heresies. This is incomparable to where we are now, where people are just flat out doing heresy and then saying, so what? And welcome to our guest, Subdeacon Nectarios. How's it going? Glory to God. The feast? You're still on mute.
Bless the feast. How are you, Father?
All right. Thank you very much. So let's finish this up a bit. You have any opening thoughts on this you want to mention?
No, I'll let you finish, and then we'll tag on it.
This is amazing.
Amazing.
Saint Cyril of Jerusalem, great saints.
Saint Cyril of Jerusalem actually opposed Nestorius. The idea that everyone was at peace together is ridiculous, and it's certainly not what exists in world Orthodoxy today.
Meletius was the spiritual father, ordained Saint Basil the Great. He was celebrated at the Second Ecumenical Council. He was the president of the Second Ecumenical Council.
And the Second Ecumenical Council wasn't recognized by Rome because they recognized Paulinus's party. The factions that existed in the 4th century church reflect the reality that true Orthodox live in today, not this idea of this artificial unity he keeps talking about.
He was celebrated by all the saints and the fathers there. St. John Chrysostom received the ordination in his hands, I believe.
And what happened to St. John Chrysostom after he was deposed illegally? He formed himself another faction. I believe that's on your website. There was an article by Father Alexander Gatsopoulos about it, Subdeacon. The idea that what he's presenting is ridiculous. He's trying to say that this is the way world Orthodoxy is now. No, the confused situations that I have been describing, the crisis situations, are precisely reflected in how true Orthodox live today. So I think it's ridiculous. I don't know what fantasy people are imbibing, but I'm a little tired of Father Peter selling it. I'm really upset that he chose today to do it.
And so this is father of fathers, and yet he was elected in part by Arians who thought he was going to have an Arian position. You can't make sense of that with the true / GOC.
Actually, we can, and we understand the history better because we understand the divisions of the church that had to be resolved, unlike yourself, who doesn't even admit to them happening. I would love for Father Peter to say, hey, I can admit that the New Calendar State Church of Greece might have been persecuting and killing people for 70 years, but I don't think he'll ever say it. Well, 50 years, but I don't think he'll ever say it.
Position today. It's overly simplistic and ignores church history. You can't make sense of that. You would, if you had their position ecclesiologically, you would be among those who rejected Saint Meletius in Antioch.
Maybe. There were Orthodox there, and they did have to worry about that part. They had to resolve that division, but don't pretend there was no division.
Who some of them who did later on, there was a schism there. So
no, not later on. The schism was actually already there.
It's just not. It's not following the fathers. Is not accurate. It's simplistic. It takes statements that were made by saints, separate from all heresy. It makes.
What was that question? Give me a second. Hold on.
Separate from all.
Did the true Orthodox come about due to new calendarists forcing old calendarists to submit or die? Yes, they did. I can see why you sped past the question, Father. And they killed many in the early 20th century. Reason why there were catacomb Russians? Very true. Hey, it's EJ. Welcome. I see. Now watch this reaction. He just kind of like put it up on the screen and he's like, whoops.
Statements that were made by saints, separate from all heresy. It takes those statements and it applies them incorrectly.
Well, that was interesting.
Wasn't that it? I don't even. It's what do you even say to that?
It's infuriating, and he chose today to do it.
Now you know how I feel. I was, I lived through that for 3 years. It's now.
Well, I can't imagine. I'm just reviewing a video on YouTube. You've got a lot more experience with that situation.
Before I used to give him the benefit of the doubt because he doesn't read. The stuff he publishes, his books, he doesn't read that stuff. Wow. That's why in the book, the what is it? The heterodox book, no, the heretics, praying with heretics, praying with by Athanasios Gotsopoulos, that book.
Okay.
In that book, Athanasios Gotsopoulos, who's condemns his own resist within position
Yeah.
in that book, and he publishes it. So he's an ideologue. He's a dishonest. At this point, he's just being a dishonest ideologue. He'll defend. He's essentially defending the Constantinople. That's why he doesn't. That's why he always refuses to reference the World Council of Churches issue.
Well, and that's what makes me really sad about the whole thing, is that people can be easily misled, and what ends up happening is that they end up in some weird, I think, somebody said Paisiites, or I would call Paisiadoxy, where it's like these modern elders become their guide for everything, and they don't even realize half the stuff that the elders said is just cribbed off the Desert Fathers anyway. And
yeah,
so
one of the things that was my red line in the sand is, I remember it was back in it was 2023, in Thessalonians, Saint Paul and in the other scriptures, it says, depart from every brethren that doesn't hold to the tradition of the church. Or so I asked him about that, and he said on YouTube in a question and answer session, for those that are subscribers, I'm sure they can, if they comb through, they could dig it up. He said, well, Saint Paul was the contemporary elder of his day. We follow the contemporary elders of our day.
wow.
That was his decision. So he completely wrote off St. Paul, saying break from heretics or separate from heretics, rejected the scriptures.
That's terrifying.
He's essentially an Orthodox Presbyterian. That's all he is.
Wow. That's actually terrifying.
Yeah.
Well, we've gone through it. First off, I'm glad that you came on. Oh, go ahead.
Have you noticed that that's one of the major things, is he never ever covers the canonical interpretations that exist ever. It's funny because Saint Nicodemo says if it's a heresy before a council or not, it doesn't matter whether it's before a council or not. Any of the major interpreters of the canon 15, before official condemnation or after, that's not one of the criterias.
No, it's not
heresy.
Now, GTC does ask in the comments. He says, "Can you link or post on what OE live stream Father Peter said that?" I'm not sure it was a live stream, but if it was, I'm assuming that where he said to the effect of St. Paul is the elder of his day, but Elder Paisius.
Oh, that one. We combed. It was in one of those questions and answer sessions. You're gonna have to dig through it, and it was before I joined the GOC, so it must have been sometime in mid to late 2023, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll do the. I guess we'll have to do the digging.
I think death of compromise or whatever that. He's got some work to do.
Yeah, that one's going to be a deep dive. But if you were to find that, I mean, that's first off, I've never heard anything like that. And if he said that, and I am assuming he did, as you said he did, that's something that's serious. There's something seriously wrong there.
That was almost a verbatim quote. That's why I remember it so distinctly, because it was like, well, he was the elder of his time, and that's what he decided. We follow the elders of our day. Completely dismissed the scriptures, and and that it's sad, and it's not surprising, because now we have, Orthodox, Presbyterians don't have bishops, right? So they have presbyters and what they call elders. So I mean, it's the Orthodox Presbyterianism, is essentially what it is.
That's terrifying. Well, first off, Subdeacon, thank you for coming on the stream. I'm glad you did, to add additional context. The problem is worse than I thought. But in any case,
before you head off, I wanted to share something with you.
Sure.
My friend just translated the confession of the true faith of Saint Mark of Ephesus before the Council of Florence. when he's talking about we don't follow the elders, right?
Yeah.
Or the saints of before. He says, I will never receive into communion those who dare to add a novelty to the symbol concerning the procession of the Holy Spirit, as long as they persist in such innovation. Quote, for whoever is in communion with those excommunicated from communion, it says, let him also be excommunicated. And the divine Chrysostom, interpreting the words of the apostle, if anyone preaches to you another gospel than what you have received, let him be accursed. Say this, he did not say if they preach something contrary or entirely corrupt, but even if they preach something small in addition to what you have received, or perhaps alter anything, let him be accursed. And then there also says moderation is necessary so that the law is not violated. And St. Basil the Great in his ascetic rules says this, to reject something that has been written or to introduce something unwritten is a clear departure from the faith and a sign of arrogance. For our Lord Jesus Christ says, my sheep hear my voice. And before this, he says, they will not follow a stranger, but will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers. And he goes on talking about, and he references St. Polycarp, says, anyone who speaks beyond what is established, even if he is worthy by faith, even if he fasts, even if he maintains virginity, even if he performs signs, even if he prophesizes, let him be to you as a wolf in sheep's clothing, working to the destruction of the sheep. And what need is there to say more? All the teachers of the church, all the councils, all the divine scriptures urge us to flee from those of different opinions and to draw from communion with them.
You can't get clearer than that.
So, Father Peter, time to stop being dishonest about what the saints actually say. So it's so disgusting. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, I'd like to thank everyone for watching. Please do support the channel. Thank you, Subdeacon Notarios, for joining
Thank you, Father, for having me on. It's always good to talk to you.
Likewise. And we're going to keep going. As I said, I wouldn't have done this video today. I was busy celebrating the exaltation of the cross and remembering the cross that appeared over Athens. And then this had to happen.
Yeah.
We go on. I'll be back in probably about a half an hour with the details of the debate that's going to be going on in November. For everyone else, I want to thank you for listening, for your support, and through the prayers of Holy Father, so Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Amen. Have a good night, everyone. Or if you want to find out about the debate, come back soon.